I'm Deepak Chopra. You're watching New Realities.
Welcome to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'm very happy to have on this program Roland Thomas. He's a naturopath and the president of an exciting company called Bioage. He's also the author of this amazing book, Awakening the Genius Within, and it's all about this product, which is a microalgae, and the importance of microalgae in particular. Thank you, Roland, for being here.
Well, thank you, Alan, for having me on New Realities.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, this is such an exciting product because it is almost a complete supplement. You don't even call it a supplement. You call it a complement.
Correct, to your diet. Yeah, to our
Right.
diet.
So let's talk about what is microalgae. I mean, this spirulina has been around a long time and other algae, but what makes this so important? What is the importance of algae in particular?
Well, maybe we can start there.
Let's start there.
15 billion years ago, or so the theory goes, our planet became a rock. That went on for 10 billion years until blue-green algae and water came about, and the planet since then has been called the blue planet because
as the first life form, right?
Correct. The cyanobacteria, which is the common blue-green algae, which has survived to this day all extinction. But it is not until, just to speak about the importance of algae, it is not until other algae came about a billion or so years later, such as the red algae, orange algae, brown algae, that it allowed for oxygenation or antioxidation to happen within the water and the atmosphere so that other more complex life form could come about. Without algae, there would be no life. To this day, algae still procure our atmosphere, our ozone, so that we can live, as well as allow for life form to navigate our ocean. By 80% of the oxygen we breathe still is as a result of these microalgae. And also, we also know that over 50% of our planet, particularly in bodies of water, is still addressed or composed of microalgae and somewhat macroalgae as well, the larger algae such as kelp.
But when we bring this into our bodies, its effect on a cellular level you talk about. And you talk about, also we can talk a little about disease is a cellular problem. It's not necessarily, of course, organs, but it starts on a cellular level. So talk about microalgae absorption in the cell.
First of all, we are really the son or a result of microalgae, of the first life form. Our cells resembles very closely that of the blue-green algae in terms of our requirements for nutrients, composition of our cell, as well as the oxygen and alkalinity level. So there's an affinity there. Right. And we also know that microalgae are the most efficient photosynthetic agent. In other words, all energy comes from sunlight. And they're the best at capturing this sunlight, particularly because of chlorophyll. Everyone knows about the importance of chlorophyll. But also we now know the importance, which we didn't know 50 years ago, of the carotenoid, the colorful pigments like lutein, lycopene, and 1,000 now that we understand, that are also partners with chlorophyll to bring the sunlight into the confines of our cell, into the mitochondria, which is where we gather our energy from. We live off of electrical energy that is manufactured from our sugar, from our main diet, into energy.
Into the mitochondria are the energy producers in the cell itself.
Correct.
And the microalgae feeds the mitochondria.
And food at large, of course. Right. But imagine we have 2,000 on average of these little battery pack in our cell. In each cell, about 100 trillion cell potentially in our body. That's the engines that we have to feed, not just a single Lamborghini engine. So we have to bring food to these little manufacturer of energy. So nutrition is an art, but it's also a science. The research we're going to be talking about takes the art of growing microalgae, combining them together, and presenting them for consumption to animal or human so that they're the most efficient food on earth at this time. that I know.
Well, talk about the research because, just so your backstory a little bit, you used to say you used to take handfuls of supplements because that's what you thought would keep you healthy. You were a marathon runner. And when you found this product, all you did was take it, you got rid of all the other supplements.
I did, yes. At a time when my health was really not in the best, I was obese and I had severe chronic back problem and a tendonitis of the knee. I had stopped being able to run or lift heavy packages for my wife or even my children when they were born. It was a little risky, frankly. I met this scientist, Russian scientist, that immigrated to Canada in 1996, that had dedicated his life on behalf of the former Soviet Union to research. He had latched on to microalgae at university as he graduated in biology and was allowed to investigate algae to reduce major productivity and disease issue in the livestock industry affecting the food supply of the nation, potentially. What
livestock as well, you're saying?
Well, it was primarily research with animals, but we'll get to people. Which was affected the food supply of the nation. And he was allowed to, because of his early success looking at algae as a solution, he was allowed to start working with many small trials of animals locally with real life research. And subsequently, years into it, they eventually learned to combine and to grow algae, invented technology, for example, bioreactors, covered facility, even in the deep of Russia where there was no sunlight or enough heat to grow algae. They were able to manufacture algae or facility to grow the algae, and were able to take their research to extremely large trials comprising over 1.5 million animals.
Wow.
Which was a mandate in Russia to research first primarily with animal before coming to human.
What was the result of microalgae with the animals?
The goal of the research was to increase productivity, which implied stopping the principal disease, which were cancers or endocrine issues, mastitis with dairy cow or other herbivore like goats and sheep. And also to increase fertility, which was a major decline. There were infection issues in these large farms that they had aggregated together, somewhat like we did in America, and which leads to shorter lifespan of lactating cow or egg-laying chicken. Half the life is cut short in these facilities, and the use of antibiotic and poor hygienes. And so there was declining productivity, which was a very serious problem and remains a serious problem in our America and the world. So that the result was that unexpectedly, productivity increased in terms of number of eggs per year, 30% more milk per cow per year.
By giving them microalgae.
By feeding them these developed blends of microalgae, as well as reduction of the feed required. So in other words, the animal became more efficient. As well, there was a reduction, prevention of tumors and cancers which were prevalent in certain species.
So the research just started with animals. You saw the benefit
Correct.
of animals, and how did it get to humans?
Over 20 species of animal were tested.
Oh, really?
And proven, undeniably, because of the volume, because of the elimination of placebo effect. When you look at 100,000 chicken housing here against 100,000 there is no manipulation.
Right, they're not psychologically thinking.
Correct. And also you have the benefit of having them all on the same diet, all of the same age. So
Right.
it's undeniable, if you wish, empirical evidence. What led to human use and where we are today with sharing it with human was, first of all, the scientists, as many as 900 people were involved at times supporting the scientists. We're all stealing the algae from the farm.
Take it for themselves.
Of course, yeah. And of course, the lead scientists themselves, they were using it with their cats, with their pets, with their family, with great success, but it was not the mandate, and it was actually sort of under the table. You know, in Russia, you had to work
see.
by the book.
So they started to that's funny. They
Yeah,
started
it
to
is.
steal the
Yeah,
algae.
it's funny. The stories in the book, I relate several of these cute stories. But what led to a more formal use with animal was, first of all, Dr. Kiriak is the name of the lead researcher, had been motivated to conduct this research or to study medicine because he had been plagued with loss of his grandfather, his father, brother, sister with pancreatic cancer, which was prevalent in that neck of the country, as well as within his family.
Right.
As a young man, at 14, he lost his father, and so he joined studies in biology. And when he graduated, the government took him to animals. He wished, he was impressed with the new heart that we were able to implant in the 70s.
Right.
He had wished to work with human to prevent cancer in human, but he was the government mandated that he went with animals because there was a major
So he
issue.
got into animals. So he was a government project to use
Correct.
microalgae on the animals.
Correct. The Academy of Science initiated the project, and subsequently he was picked up by the Ministry of Nutrition. He was eventually nominated or named the director of nutritional science.
What makes your product different than all the other algae that people are marketing?
The principal reason is that most algae are grown in open lagoon, lake, and wilderness, exposed to pollution, exposed to UV damage nowadays, exposed to
bird droppings.
or fish and
Yeah.
so forth, and that makes the algae grow a little lame. It's amazing that they survive because they are survivor. They have never been extinct. So what was invented and understood was the covering facility to grow the algae to protect them from airborne pollutant, and later on during the research, because of the lack of proper body of water, the use of thermal spring, volcanic thermal spring, was innovated,
Okay.
which is the richest source of mineral on Earth. All that is required to grow organically algae without fertilizer was discovered at that time. And it's not an art, it's become a science. So that's the major difference.
Oh, so this algae is grown with volcanic ash as opposed to
Volcanic
chemicals.
thermal spring. Second one is the mixing, the blending of several algae. Particularly, remember how Earth was formed and how we were able to breathe
Right.
because of the presence of colored algae,
Blue-green
the
algae.
carotenoid. No,
Oh.
blue-green was there, but there was no life except blue-green. It's when the red algae came about, and the reason these red algae, they're red because they contain the various carotenoid, the colorful beta-carotene, famous beta-carotene, and several others, such as famous astaxanthin, alpha-carotene, lutein, lycopene, phycocyanin, etc., which allowed for, during the research, to reach the point where they were able to not only suspend cancers in animals, even return animal to production after remission. Not just sort of bite into slow it down, but literally prevent the cancers from occurring.
So this product in particular, how does it affect human beings?
It was first trialed informally when Dr. Kiriak was allowed to use it after the terrible disaster of Chernobyl, which we all know was massive, the worst ever. Possibly Fukushima is pretty bad too.
I think Fukushima might be worse, but
Absolutely.
still, so much radiation went into the
Correct.
air.
And still, by the way,
It's
from Chernobyl, it's
it's
still
still-
spewing. It
is
has
it?
never been covered perfectly.
Oh.
Anyway, so he was allowed to work with hundreds of, particularly children and adults that were severely impacted, pretty much scheduled to die in local schools
From the
or,
radiation, the Chernobyl
170,000 people eventually somewhat died as a result of Chernobyl, and the entire city was been, moved away. And to this day, that whole area is devastated. But anyway, he was able to trial this algae at the time with great success, and many people are alive today because of that experiment. Children were very successful because they were less damaged, if you wish. And while some men or adults, there were many success, and some not because they didn't have the discipline, they had terrible lifestyle issues or diet, and they kept smoking and going to the bar, so it didn't always work.
Well, let me understand. So there are people that went to the exposed areas where people were very sick by radiation.
Correct.
He gave the microalgae
Correct.
to them.
Correct.
And what was the result of giving the microalgae?
The way that he explains it,
Yeah.
and we see it in America because there's many people suffering from leukemia, many people, Russian and Ukrainian, and people that came from the region, and their children that are living in America, and we work with many. But the way he describes it is that radiation is a vibration that ruins all down to your bone marrow from a frequency perspective. So when your bone marrow becomes infected, then your new blood cells are already weak, so you have leukemia or anemia. And then you have degenerative conditions of the liver because of having to detoxify the poisons in the body, as well as some of the strontium or whatever those minerals, terrible radioactive debris are.
Strontium 90.
So you have declining health, and then eventually you lose the hair. We've all seen the pictures of children with their eyes out of the socket. So the way he describes it is that the reverse occurs. When you can bring super nutrition, quality nutrition, to the confines of the mitochondria, you restore that electrical energy. When 2,000 little battery pack in your cell, 5,000 in your heart cell starts to resonate, then that negative radioactive frequency cannot win. So there was regeneration, starting with bone marrow, and of course the new blood cell, the river of life, and regeneration of liver, pancreas, growing of hair, and restoration of life.
So this is really a miracle product because the radiation affects the cells on the smallest level, and by
Absolutely.
getting the nutrients into that mitochondria,
Correct.
then it nourishes the cells so
Correct.
it can throw off
It
the
becomes
radiation.
anti-radiation,
Right.
antibacterial, antiviral, anti-tumorogenesis. And by the way, the miracle is not the product.
Oh, really?
It is the human cell. It's the human genius. That's why, well, we'll talk about it maybe. I
Yeah.
called my book Awakening the Genius Within.
Awakening the Genius Within. Talk about that part, because I really love your explanation of how it feeds the cell and regenerates and for illness, radiation. But the brain, let's talk about its direct effects
Truly.
on what you call the genius within.
Correct. And that's another major differentiation of this blend of algae versus a single, say, spirulina or blue-green algae. A very small amount, literally a gram of this food can impact the life of a bull, of an elephant, within 20 minutes.
Really?
You don't have to take a spoonful of it. So what is the explanation that a small capsule within overnight will allow for a 5-year-old autistic boy to button his shirt on Saturday morning after taking a capsule on Friday night?
Wow.
How do we explain that?
Yeah.
It's not that the small amount of food goes to every mitochondria in the body. It's not computable that way. It's that because of the
But
presence.
before you say that, I just want to
Correct.
say I took one of the before, and I feel a lot of clarity. I feel like there's a sharpness and a focus that I don't normally have.
Yeah.
But
It absolutely you're not placeboing here.
I
This
don't
is
think
true.
so.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing as
Yeah.
you're talking. Wow, I'm really present and feeling.
It's bright, eh?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So tell me what happens.
Yeah. Well, anyway, his name is Doogie. That's one of many cases. Button his shirt. Of course, he knew how to do it, but an autistic child has to be coaxed. They don't want to participate. He was also more social in the park, playing with other kids that morning. And his mother came to see us on a Sunday following, with tears of joy, sharing with us. And to this day, Doogie, now 9 years later, has continued to progress, to speak more words, to ride a bicycle, which
He
is...
takes the algae every day.
he loves it, and he knows it, and he's very smart, and he's a normal school class.
So what's happening in the brain with this?
So
Yes.
that's why we call the book Awakening the Genius Within. It sounds lofty, but it's pretty scientifically...
No, I think it's great because
Yeah.
everyone has a genius within.
is that this food has an efficiency because of not only the chlorophyll, but the chain of carotenoid, lutein, lycopene, we now know that they're all partners with chlorophyll and chlorophyll A and B. I know it's a little biology here, but it's called the energy transfer funnel. They facilitate bringing the sugar, the fats, the protein to the mitochondria as partners in that. And you've all heard of the blood-brain barrier or the blood-retinal barrier, for example, which is basically a diminution of capillaries or small vessels to bring blood, because these areas are protected. They're so critical to life that our body have developed a protection. We call it blood-brain barrier. Literally, because there's less blood going there, it only tolerates very tiny molecule in perfection. Right? So no poison is allowed to go to the hypothalamus, which is what the genius within is. The hypothalamus is that principal organ at the base of our brain, along with, you've heard of the pituitary, the master gland, that regulate homeostasis in our body, which is the balance of hormone, the balance of all our glands, the balance even of our organs, liver, pancreas, certainly kidney. By the way, kidney, that people don't realize, are the organ that synthesize vitamin D, which is an hormone. So not only that relationship between the hypothalamus and every organ gland in the body, but literally the hypothalamus and every single cell in the body has a relationship, a biofeedback. Let me explain why I say that before you cut me off, because it's exciting.
Yes, tell me.
I'm a marathon runner.
Okay.
And I used to run before taking these algae earlier in my life. And as a young man, I would develop blisters in my big toe or between my toes. And I could only start running after I started introducing this superfood in my life. And I discovered that I was running without blisters, without injuries, without bandages. And as a 53-year-old man at the time, I would hit the start line and notice young people or older people with bandages or with conversation. Oh, I have not been running for 6 months because of inflammation, because of this. So just to point that this product, when you with this food, is highly anti-inflammatory, anti-acidic.
So you don't have any blisters when you're running anymore?
I don't have any blisters. I don't have any injury. I'm less exhausted. I recover much faster. After a 4-hour run, I'm social.
Getting back to the blood-brain barrier, how does this product go into the hypothalamus and change its effectiveness?
So we have now the perfect food. We're able to reach mitochondria without any burden or fatigue, because there's no fiber to break. This is pure nutrients. That's the first rule. And subsequently, because of the presence of these carotenoid and the perfect chlorophylls, able to cross the blood-brain barrier, because when you consume a capsule or a meal of any sort, it is broken down into our blood vessel after being filtered by the liver, and it's released in thousands of miles of blood vessel and capillary. And it is transported at very high speed. Every cell and tissue and organ has access to this cloud of nutrients, because at this level it's no longer food, right? It's molecule, it's at quasi above atomic. Right. And so because of the perfection and the presence of all the cofactors and the companion to our sugars, fats, because we need those, that's where we get our or energy from. It's from sugar mostly. Right. Reaching thus that anterior part of the hypothalamus, the genius, the conductor of our philharmonic orchestra, which is often sleeping at the podium with aging, with deficiency.
This feeds the hypothalamus in a way that many foods can't.
Correct. Rapidly.
And
upon
the
ingestion,
as it's more functional,
it wakes up.
Yeah.
It's like kicking the hypothalamus on the shin. Ouch. Do your job, Mr. Maestro. Tap on the podium, wake up the drummers. So that's what it's about.
It's because your brain is functioning at a higher potential?
Well, not just the brain. If you can reach that hypothalamus, then the cascading, resulting effect of the brain engaging more with the pancreas. For example, a dog drools when it sees food. It's not the mouth that decides to drool. It's the brain, way before the food arrives. So similarly, we decline with aging. Our life force drops. And then we start to have endocrine imbalance. We start to have adrenal fatigue. We start to have sexual function decline. We start to have fertility issue. And the hypothalamus also is slowed down and becomes a little bit sluggish. So the resolution of just-in-time synthesis of, for example, vitamin D at our kidney, or insulin, or other various hormones, literally hundreds of various hormone declines. And unbeknownst to most people, many scientists don't know this, every cell in the human body is a hormone system, because it releases, it synthesizes 100,000 variants of proteins or peptides or whatever the body needs around it, or hormones. As you know, the cells that make up the thyroid gland produce a hormone. So it is the cellular level that is the genius with them, and with coordination, biofeedback.
I've never heard anyone more passionate about their product and more informed than what you're telling me here. And you know, sounds like the complete food in a sense. Is it a food? Would you consider
it's a perfect food? It's the most complete food that I know after 20 years of researching, of being skeptical, of investigating, of comparing. Every day of my life I'm challenged to share. When I met Dr. Kiriak, before I knew about this product, I was obese. I think I shared earlier. I had back problem and knee problem.
How heavy were you?
190, which is about 45 pounds over my natural weight. And I had been struggling for 20 years to stop gaining weight. And by that time, as you know, I had acquired about 25 different bottles of supplements that I took daily. Started in 1980 with vitamin E to alleviate. The doctor had mentioned that it would be good for my knee problem and prevent joint issue, etc. And also at that time there was a rumor that it prevented cardiovascular problem. And my dad, by the time he was 65, had some heart issues, had 2 bypass of his hips due to arthritis, and suffered from emphysema, having smoked till the age of 40. Fortunately, he quit. But he subsequently became impacted with early dementia.
Wow.
By the time he was 70, he had full-blown Alzheimer, and not only was he in public homes for a while, removed from my mother, a terrible family drama, but then my sister took him on to change his diaper for the last 10 years of his life. This is just horrible suffering.
Before you discovered the algae.
Correct. And so I was inclined to want to take care of my health more than my dad had done. He was really an example of what I didn't want to be. And but taking those 20 or so supplements, one for my prostate, one for my multi-mineral, multivitamin, alpha-lipoic acid, I could name them all. And frankly, I stopped entirely after taking this product. Had I continued at the rate of introducing these new supplements in my life, I would have adopted by then CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, resveratrol, and there's so many. Vitamin D was not even.
Taken 30 tablets a day.
Oh, more than that, about 69 or 70. My daughters thought that I was sick, and frankly, maybe I was. But anyway, you know, when I started to, Dr. Kiriak shared with me a handful of these little capsules, and the first night, like you did today, I noticed a sharpness. It was normally by 9:30 at night, after a pasta and a glass of wine with my sisters at a reunion in Montreal, I would have asked them to, let's go to bed. You know, I would have gone to bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock. That was my pattern. I was like a couch potato by then, literally. And it's pretty typical in a 50-year-old man. And I had taken a few capsules that day, and it was 11:30 at night. I missed our conversation.
Wow.
And I felt really this subtle pleasure, really. And I continued to take the algae, and within days, literally, I found myself sitting on my chair, straight back, with no complaint, with no feeling of having to get up and stretch. I was really in trouble with my back. I had to see chiropractors quasi-weekly or monthly, massage therapy, stretching. It was a burden, and I saw it for the rest of my life. I was stuck. And I understand
this
today.
would be your condition,
Absolutely,
and-
absolutely.
And now it's not.
It's gone, entirely gone. So anyway, within weeks of starting to introduce this food in my life, I dropped the other very quickly. Boom, 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 boom.
dropped all the other
of
side.
them, because they'd never done anything for me, and this did it. Energy was restored, focus, clarity. I totally, frankly, reinvented my physical life in terms of the energy. I lost weight within the first year entirely to 155. I began my first half marathon the first year, and I ran 4 the next year. I'm that type of person.
And how many marathons are you running now?
Well, I ran one just a few months ago, September 24th, Montreal Marathon. But I've run many marathons. The point is that my pain dissipated, my knee tendonitis is gone, and I have boundless energy, and I have really reinvented my business life, my wellness, and my spiritual life, really. Because when you have energy, because depression is a matter of energy, and I was depressed about my life.
But that's beautiful. You reinvented your whole life,
Correct,
spiritually,
correct,
physically,
correct,
mentally,
correct.
with this product.
Correct. There's more to it. It supports my desire to eat less in life. I was always somewhat of a person who didn't want to eat too much and be overweight, and it was difficult.
Right.
You have this hunger, and you want
Because
to
you don't need to eat because your cells are being fed.
Correct. I take a few capsules throughout the day. Forget to eat sometimes.
That's why people eat so much junk food, because the junk food's not feeding them, so they need more and more and more
Absolutely.
in order to eat.
Absolutely.
So your conclusion, well, first, how can people find you?
The best way, frankly, is to read the book, which is free online at awakeningthegeniuswithin.com. Get your eyes on this book. You can get a hard copy there as well. But really, the product can be purchased at bioage.com, BIOAGE.com. Take a look. Call us at 877-288-9116. Somebody will answer. We like to speak with people every day. We get inundated with calls, and that's what we do.
So the final question is really about your healing mission. What is your healing mission, and how are you taking this out into the world with this product?
Yeah. As I shared earlier, when I saw my father, I lost also half of my siblings. They've passed earlier than my parents. My mother lived 90, my father 83, but he suffered the last 20. My mother suffered the last 10 years, severe of her life. And the fact that I've lost my sibling, which is a phenomenon right now. Our generation, my generation, are passing before our parents.
It's epidemic, yes.
And I have still siblings in my family that are in deep trouble. One affected with stage 5, literally, probably cancer at this time. It starts there, but from there, as a naturopath, I've met so many families, so many friends, associates, and clients that don't know what to do. They're confused. They're told to take their advertisement on television every day, as you know, a drug advertisement, and see your doctor. And they have conditions like pre-diabetes or diabetes and chronic fatigue, and they're told to take so many supplements, and literally some people come to me with boxes to show me how proud they are, spreadsheet of which one to take, along with pharmaceutical mixes, and they see 4 doctors. Everyone has their specialty. And my mission in life is to hopefully affect 1 person a day or 10 to simplify their life, their drug usage of pharmaceutical drugs or over-the-counter drugs or supplements, and the confusion that comes with that. And the mixing and matching makes no chemical sense whatsoever. And to teach them about the simplicity of losing the weight, eating way more plants, fitness, finding a passion in some sort of a sport or an activity that you like. I don't want anyone to be a slave to bodybuilding if they don't like it. You have to find something, Qigong or yoga. Breathing is the most number 1 food on earth. People don't breathe. They're shallow breathing. They forget to breathe. Literally, the breath is the number 1 food on earth. You can live a month or 2 if you breathe properly without food. People don't realize that, how important the breath. So I like to teach, I call what I teach the martial art of wellness. Martial art in that, like fighting on the street, you have to become good and eventually learn to not fight. And similarly, I want you to become ninja of wellness, to not fight with pharmaceutical drug or be caught off guard by this supplement, this new supplement, and the various pitch that we get every day. Go back to real food, whole food plant diet, fitness, being lean and mean for the rest of your life. And my passion is to live personally to 100, not because of the duration, but I'm so vibrant. I'm so happy and I'm so energetic. I don't want it to end. But if I were sick like my father, I wouldn't want to live, really.
Well, that is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. It's not necessarily about the product, although it is a great product, but it's bringing the best health you know to people for their optimum life and functionality and clarity of mind.
Correct.
So I thank you for being on the show,
Alan.
Roland.
Thank you,
really
Alan.
a beautiful thing. I appreciate your passion and what you're giving the world. And the product,
Biosuperfood.
Biosuperfood.
Yeah, bio as in organic, super, and
Yeah.
it's a food. That's which I love.
And I recommend it too. Also, the book, Awakening the Genius Within, finding out how this product goes in and wakes up the hypothalamus to make you a more creative genius, which you already are. So I've been talking to Roland Thomas, Biosuperfood. The website again?
Bioage.com.
Bioage.com. I'm Alan Steinfeld. Thank you for watching New Realities.